The narrow streets of Cebu City were already awake long before sunrise, filled with the familiar sounds of jeepneys, tricycles, and vendors calling out their morning goods. In a small rented room near the port area lived Peter Rosalita, a 10-year-old Filipino boy whose voice carried dreams far bigger than the walls that surrounded him. Every morning before school, Peter would hum soft melodies while helping his mother, Maria Rosalita, prepare simple meals. Music had always been part of his life, not as a luxury, but as a lifeline. When times were difficult, Peter sang. When hope felt far away, he sang even louder. Peter's father had passed away years earlier, leaving Maria to raise him on her own. To support their daily needs, Peter often joined local barangay events, small fiestas, and even sang along the streets of Cebu. Some people stopped to listen, some dropped coins, but many paused because they felt something real in his voice. It wasn't just talent, it was emotion shaped by struggle, faith, and love for family. Despite his young age, Peter understood responsibility. He dreamed not of fame, but of giving his mother a better life. When news came that Peter had been invited to audition for America's Got Talent, the idea felt unreal. Cebu City had never seemed farther from the bright stages of America. The journey itself was overwhelming, his first airplane ride, his first time leaving the Philippines, and his first time seeing a world so different from home. Yet, in his heart, Peter carried Cebu with him, the warmth of his neighbors, the prayers whispered in the chapel, and the songs sung under the open sky. Backstage at the AGT auditions, Peter stood quietly beside his mother. The room buzzed with voices, laughter, and nerves from performers around the world. Peter's small hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his simple Filipino-inspired outfit. Maria knelt in front of him, fixing his collar and brushing his hair back with gentle hands. Her eyes were filled with pride and fear all at once. She reminded him that no matter what happened on stage, he had already won by believing in himself. As the announcer called Peter's name, his heart pounded loudly in his chest. He closed his eyes for a moment and whispered a short prayer in Filipino, asking for courage and strength. This was more than an audition, it was the voice of a young boy from Cebu City carrying the dreams of his family and his country. Taking one deep breath, Peter stepped forward, ready to let his voice speak where words could not. The moment Peter Rosalita stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, the bright lights felt almost blinding. From where he stood, the massive theater seemed endless, filled with strangers whose faces blurred into one glowing sea. His small figure looked fragile against the enormous stage, yet there was a quiet determination in the way he held the microphone. The audience murmured softly, unsure of what to expect from a 10-year-old boy with a gentle smile and a Filipino accent. When Peter introduced himself and proudly said he was from the Philippines, a ripple of applause spread through the room. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, observing carefully. He had seen thousands of young singers before, many hopeful, many talented, but few unforgettable. Peter explained that he came from Cebu City and sang to help his mother. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke, not from fear, but from emotion. When asked why he chose to audition, Peter simply said he wanted to share his gift and make his family proud. There was a brief silence after his words, the kind that hangs heavy just before something important happens. As the music began, Peter closed his eyes. For a split second, the world disappeared. No judges, no cameras, no pressure, only the song. Then he sang. The first note floated gently through the theater, clear and pure, instantly changing the atmosphere. Conversation stopped. People leaned forward. His voice carried an unexpected depth, filled with longing and hope far beyond his age. Each lyric felt honest, as if he was telling his own life story through melody. As the song built, Peter's confidence grew. His voice soared effortlessly, powerful yet controlled, echoing across the hall. The audience sat frozen, some with hands over their mouths, others already wiping away tears. The emotion in his voice felt raw and real, like a quiet cry and a prayer combined. Simon Cowell's expression slowly shifted, from curiosity to disbelief. He leaned forward, eyes locked on Peter, clearly moved by what he was hearing. When Peter reached the final chorus, his voice rose with strength and clarity, filling every corner of the theater. It wasn't just beautiful, it was unforgettable. The last note lingered in the air, trembling softly before fading into silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then suddenly, the entire audience erupted into thunderous applause. People stood to their feet, cheering and shouting his name. Some were openly crying, overwhelmed by the performance they had just witnessed. Peter stood still, stunned, his chest rising and falling as he tried to process the moment. He lowered the microphone slightly, eyes wide, almost unsure if the applause was real. On the judges' table, Simon Cowell removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes, visibly emotional. He shook his head slowly, a rare smile forming on his face. What had just happened wasn't just a good audition, it was a moment of truth, a reminder of why music matters. On that stage, a young boy from Cebu City didn't just sing. He touched hearts, silenced doubts, and proved that talent knows no age, no borders, and no limits. The applause seemed endless, crashing over the theater like waves that refused to fade. Peter Rosalita stood at the center of the stage, frozen between disbelief and joy, his small hands gripping the microphone as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. His eyes searched the crowd, then the judges, trying to understand how a song that once echoed through the narrow streets of Cebu City had now reached thousands of hearts in a place so far from home. His chest tightened, and tears quietly formed, but he held them back, remembering his mother's words to be brave. At the judges' table, Simon Cowell sat unusually still. Known for his sharp criticism and tough standards, he looked nothing like the judge audiences were used to seeing. His arms were no longer crossed. His posture was softer, almost humbled. He slowly removed his glasses, blinking several times, clearly emotional. The room grew quiet again, this time filled with anticipation. Everyone sensed that something rare had just happened. Simon leaned toward his microphone and took a deep breath before speaking. He admitted that when Peter first walked on stage, he didn't know what to expect. He said he had heard many talented children over the years, but what made Peter different was not just his voice, it was the feeling behind it. Simon explained that every note sounded honest, as if Peter wasn't performing but reliving his story through music. He confessed that it was impossible not to be moved by a voice so young yet so full of truth. The camera cut to Peter's mother, Maria, standing backstage with her hands covering her mouth, tears streaming freely down her face. She had seen her son sing hundreds of times, but never like this. Never on a stage this big. Never in front of someone like Simon Cowell. In that moment, all the sacrifices, struggles, and sleepless nights felt worth it. Simon continued, his voice softer than usual. He told Peter that he reminded him why shows like America's Got Talent exist, to discover voices that come not just from training, but from life itself. He praised Peter for carrying the spirit of the Philippines onto the world stage, saying his performance felt like a gift, not just to the judges, but to everyone watching. The audience listened in silence, hanging on to every word. When Simon finally gave his vote, he didn't hesitate. With a smile and a nod filled with respect, he said yes. The crowd exploded once more, louder than before. The other judges quickly followed, all praising Peter's courage, humility, and extraordinary talent. But it was Simon's reaction that stayed with everyone, the rare moment when even the toughest judge was clearly touched. Peter could no longer hold back his tears. He covered his face for a moment, overwhelmed, then looked up and bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he learned back home. He thanked the judges in a trembling voice and said he was proud to be Filipino. The audience responded with cheers, waving flags and chanting his name. As Peter walked off the stage and into his mother's arms, the world felt different. He was still the same boy from Cebu City, but now his voice had crossed oceans. That night, Simon Cowell didn't just witness a great audition, he witnessed a dream taking its first real step into the world.